Hello everybody, Intuition here. Thank you as always for making time and space for us. Today we are going to discuss a relatively complicated subject. However, we have faith that we are going to describe it just so that it makes sense. This complicated topic in which we'd like to discuss is the illusion and understanding of time, as well as the added concept that the past is the future is the past, and now is just based off of the polarity of the experience of understanding yourself. Now, let us just start with the precipice of time. We are sure you've already understood and heard this from other individuals that have discussed the notion and mechanism of time. However, there is, again, to some degree, no such thing as the past in the way that we understand the past to be. And there is no such thing as the future as we have been told to understand it, because all time is happening now. There is no such thing to some degree as the past or the future. Everything is happening now, which means that 2024 is happening now, the Civil War is happening now, the Holocaust is happening now, the First and Second World Wars are happening now, the Titanic is happening now, the prehistoric age is happening now, the creation of the universe is happening right now. But it is just layered on top of each other, and depending on your frame of reference of experience is what it is that you're going to be perceiving as happening as right now. But that does not negate the fact that everything is happening right now in this moment, because there is no such thing, again, as time. Time is a perception based off of your polarity and understanding self. So what we mean by that is, outside of what we just shared about time, everything in life, everything within the universe, there is polarity, meaning there is a positive and a negative charge to it. There is black, there is white. There is yes, there is no. There's positive, there's negative. And that same idea exists within you. There is a positive aspect of understanding self, and there's a negative aspect of understanding self. Not based in value-based judgments, based on the positive proton, negative neutron charges, right? There's a South Pole and a North Pole. And so, because everything is based in duality, that means that that creates a linear understanding of self, which means that that's what gives time the illusion that there is a past or a present because of that negative charge and that positive charge. And because those things are connected, it gives the illusion of a sequence happening one by one by one by one. But again, the only reason why you see it in that lens is because there is a negative and a positive charge in which are both connected that allows for the illusion of a sequence happening. So, those things are important to understand because of the next thing we're about to say. You're going to experience time and history depending on where you are in the polarity of understanding self, right? So you could understand the positive aspects, the positive charge of self, the enlightened aspect, the light aspect, or you are going to go into the negative charge, the denser understanding, the shadow aspect. And again, it is not good or bad. There's no value-based judgment on it because at the end of the day, it is you simply understanding more of all it is that you are, and there's no negativity really to that. However, if you experience the far negative charge of yourself, it can move into symptomologies that are associated with negative aspects of the self. But just because you experience the negative aspect of yourself does not necessarily mean that you are doing negative value-based judgment things that are not good. Just like if you move into the positive understanding of self, that does not necessarily mean that you're moving into the positive value-based judgment, things that are positive. And so, you have a life, let's say. We are all experiencing 2024. Most of us anyway. And so we're all experiencing 2024. And let's say, not that this is to be taken literal, this is an example of what it is that we're expressing. Let us say that we are all experiencing 2024, which makes you a number 5 in the continuum of 0 to 10. You are at level 5, right? And we are all at level 5 because we are all experiencing 2024. So, within that lifespan, you can go in the positive aspect of understanding self, whatever that looks like for you, or the negative aspect of understanding self, right? And so, depending on that entire lifetime, you will usually spend that time exploring one aspect. So, let's say again, because we are all experiencing 2024, we are at a number 5 in our understanding of self, all of us. And so, we spent all of our life, let's say hypothetically, understanding the negative aspect of ourselves. So that means in our next life, when we were a 5 in our past life, now we're going to experience what it means to be a 4. Because again, I spent my entire life as the number 5 in 2024, in that life cycle, going into the negative. And so because I went into the negative, I am going back numerically in my understanding of self in the negative aspect, which will then allow me to experience the life of what it means to be a number 4. And because time is all happening simultaneously, that could mean that, okay, so as a number 5, I'm experiencing 2024. But because I experienced the negative aspect of myself, and now I'm in the life of a 4, that means what I'm experiencing now is the Civil War. Because that is the experience commiserate with the understanding of self that I explored in my last life, that I am still on some level exploring, and have a choice again to either move into the positive, which will then in my next life put me into the life cycle span of a 5, which might put me back in 2024, or I could continue going into the negative densification of self, which means that, all right, now that I was a 4, now I'm going to go into a 3. And 3 may be experiencing the Titanic. And then I keep on going into the negative aspect of self. And maybe I go all the way to 0. And 0 is breaking down all the way to when the planet itself was formed, when things were being crashed into each other and being pulled apart molecularly. And all of that, again, is happening right now. But depending on your exploration of self, going into the far positive or the far negative, you're going to experience a different life cycle that is concurrent with your expression and understanding of self based off of the way in which you moved in your last life. Likewise, let's say again, you are again a level 5, number 5, we are all experiencing 2024, and you go into the positive understanding of self. And in that positive understanding of self, now in your next life, you're going to go to a 6. And now as a 6, let's say you go into the time of the Renaissance. Because the time of the Renaissance was the idea that we are all becoming enlightened, we are all connecting based off of a more understanding of self and ideals that bring us together. And let's say, again, now I'm at level 6, living in the life of the Renaissance, and now I'm going to continue understanding myself in the positive light. So now, in my next life, after the Renaissance, I moved into the numerical value of 7. And so now that I'm at the numerical value of 7, I'm experiencing Lemuria. I'm experiencing Atlantis. Because again, that was a time period where they were enlightened and luminous enough to illuminate the world based off of their understanding of self and energy. Just like a number 7 is representative of. And so time, again, is all happening now. However, what it is that you're experiencing in time is interdependent on which way you tip the scale of understanding yourself in either a negative aspect of self or a positive aspect of self. But, again, the past, much of it anyway, is really the future in the sense of the ideals that were being perpetrated and expressed in that moment. And much of the future is really the past because of the ideals and values that are being projected that you could either, again, experience yourself in the hyper-positive or hyper-negative of understanding the self. And so, either way, you can evolve in understanding the hyper-negative or the hyper-positive. And again, it might seem exhaustive in the sense of, well, what happens if you go all the way down to level 0? Then does that mean you have to work your way all the way back through all the numbers that you fell through, so to speak, and go all the way back to 10? Absolutely not. There is a quicker process in the sense of, as we said, everything is based in duality, polarities, and there is a negative or a positive. But again, because there is a negative and a positive, that creates a triad, which means that there is a point in the middle that you could go into. And if you go into that point of balance, then you skip the evolutionary track of having to go up or down in numbers. You are able to ascend. And that is where the cross comes from. Yes? The cross in the sense of the negative, the positive, that way. Or you could go into the middle point between the negative and positive, which then allows you to expand and go upwards or downwards, depending on what it is that you feel is most relevant for your understanding of self. And so, should you be a 0, experiencing worlds coming together or being pulled apart, pure energy, if you want to call it that, in its most dense form, and you are able to not go into the hyper-negative of understanding what that means, or the hyper-positive of understanding what that means, but simply go into the balance, go into the middle ground of what that means, then you are able to ascend and skip having to go through the evolution of going from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it doesn't matter if you are in the negative understanding of self or the positive understanding of self. You could always skip all of that crap and simply, again, transcend in a different way. Or you could just keep on going up in numbers. However, again, you are still going to have to move up at some point, which means you're going to have to come into the middle ground period. Whether you were a number 10 and there's nowhere really else for you to go because you've experienced yourself completely in the hyper-positive, then you might say, well, I've experienced all I can in this continuum of self. Now I need to start moving backwards in the sense of I have to start understanding myself in the hyper-negative. Or again, I could simply go up by going into the balance of those two charges, negative and positive, and becoming neutral. And so, it is important to understand those things, because when you understand that time is linear only based off of your perception of self, you going into hyper-positive or hyper-negative, it allows you to really make more of a definitive choice in what it is that you're choosing to experience and how you're going to mold your perception so that you can experience exactly what it is that's most important for you to experience, as opposed to simply saying that my life is controlled by outside circumstances that I have nothing really to do with and have no control over. Because though you might have no control per se over certain circumstances and situations outside of yourself, you 100% have control over how you perceive those experiences and how you will allow them to inform you of what it is that you need to do for yourself in order to process what it is that's in front of you. And so, we understand that that can be maybe a little confusing and absolutely long-winded. And we encourage you, if what it is that we have expressed does not make sense, or if you have a question, to please reach out, because we will be more than willing to answer any question that you may or may not have. And so, as always, just a little food for thought. Thank you, as always, for making time and space for us, and we wish you well in your understanding of self, whether that be in the negative or positive. How profound and beautiful, because you will understand something that you never quite understood before without going into either aspect. Well wishes.